talk a little bit about attachment? Because I think for people who grow up knowing they're adopted, or grow up knowing they're donor conceived, or grow up knowing they have a different dad out there, that really can have some long-term impacts in attachment and how you relate in your relationships as an adult.
So if we go back to the core concept that attachment is the dyadic regulation of emotion. So one of the things I started doing early in my career, and I was fortunate to kind of have this awareness, is number one, I realized that looking at attachment is actually secondary to a regulated state. If we don't look at regulation and co-regulation as the ability to blossom into secure attachment, then we're already missing something pretty significant. And the other part of that is if we don't look at bonding. We talk a lot about attachment, but we don't talk about bonding, which is the behavior of the parent to the child. Now, to the point of your question, when you have an early attachment disruption, which means you have a traumatic experience, a highly stressful experience, which is disruptive to your regulatory system. So it's disruptive. I feel like this is a really interesting, but really important nuance. As an adoptee, as even a child who's in foster care, when you experience that early attachment disruption, which is an early disruption to the ability of the system to regulate and co-regulate, then the significance is that it occurs in the context of human relationships. So relationships now pose a threat because relationships are the core. The breakdown of the relationship is the core trauma.
I wanted to ask you, are you kind of referring to the primal wound?
Yeah, you can call it the primal wound. It's a neurophysiologic experience that we never grieve, right?
Right.
So you have a traumatic loss and you never get an opportunity to grieve it because you're a baby, so you just cry, and a baby is supposed to be soothed. And so then when you're soothed like any other regular baby, and then because you're stress sensitive and fearful, then you start having these behavioral challenges, which get punished like any other child. And the whole point is it's not reparative to the regulatory system. So then you grow up with a impaired ability to self-regulate
So when
and a really innate reaction to co-regulation. And so then that carries over as you get older into relationships. And we never have an opportunity to repair it because we're never even aware that that's an issue because it's never been attended to for years in most instances. And so then it shows up in relationship and we don't know why we're reactive. We don't know why we get upset. We don't know why we're depressed. We don't know why we feel anxious. We don't know why we're clingy. Well, the reason is because all that goes back to your earliest core experiences, and that energy still lies within your brainstem. It still lies within your body. And until someone helps you walk into the consciousness of that experience and that pain and that grief and that loss, it's going to be hard to pull that together in a real conscious way.
Can you ground me a little bit? Because people use the terms like regulate and self-regulation and co-regulate.
Sure.
What are you talking about?
When I'm talking about regulation, I am
Yeah.
talking about, and it is a term that is used through every scientific discipline. I'm talking about the ability to maintain stress within a window of tolerance. So we all have a window of tolerance for how much stress we can handle. And we wake up in the mornings, the window's usually bigger, depending on if we slept okay and if we rested well. But during the day, that window of tolerance gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Now, as long as you're maintaining that window of tolerance, you're in a regulated state. You can think more clearly, you can interact, you can engage, you can listen, you can follow directions, you're not overwhelmed. But as soon as that window of tolerance gets too small and that stress gets too big, you move into a state called affect dysregulation. Affect dysregulation is the state of the body mind system being knocked out of homeostasis at a significant level. And here's what's important. I love this quote, comes from Alan Shore. He wrote a book called Affect Regulation and the Origin of the Self. He cited Taylor et al. In 1997. They say affect dysregulation is considered to be a fundamental mechanism involved in all psychiatric disorders. The first time I read that, I was blown away because what that means, if it's true, which I have no reason to believe it's not, being stressed out. When you're dysregulated, you're stressed out. When you're stressed out, being stressed out is a fundamental mechanism involved in all psychiatric disorders. And we don't talk about it. We don't talk
Mm.
about the impact of stress. And see, Joseph Ledoux wrote a book called The Emotional Brain. He's a neuroscientist at New York University. At New York University, and he said, this is another one of my, I love this one as well. He says, in times of stress, our thinking becomes confused and distorted and our short-term memory suppressed. So when you're stressed, you're not thinking clearly and you can't remember. And then being stressed out is a fundamental mechanism involved in all psychiatric disorders. So all of a sudden you start to put that together and you're like, this is a stress condition more than it is an attachment condition. And here's what I realized early in my career. I was like, attachment's a great concept. It really resonated with me as an adopted child. I was like, I got all the way through graduate school and never even heard the name John Bowlby, who was the father of attachment. So then I get out of graduate school and I'm studying with a psychiatrist who was an attachment guru at the time. And I'm like, this is a great concept. I love this concept. But what leads to attachment? No
Yeah.
one was talking about what leads to attachment. Everyone was just talking about attachment being this magical occurrence that occurs between a mother and an infant. Well, what makes that possible? Well, I didn't realize until much later, probably it was 7 years later, after kind of mulling over that question, that secure attachment is dependent on the ability to be regulated.
Yeah.
You can't develop secure attachment if you're stressed out. So if we really, and this is really how I came to the foundation of the work that I've been doing for the last 30 years. If we really understand that, then we have to evaluate all of our practices against children and towards children and with children. We have to evaluate them against whether it is creating more stress or whether it is helping create regulation.
Mhm.
Because if it's creating more stress, these children already come with a stress sensitive system. They're not going to be able to develop effective self regulation. But this is for all of parenting. I mean, adoption and foster care is a nuance of sensitivity, but it really applies to all parenting. It applies to all relationships. The moment you become stressed, you constrict into every cell in your system constricts into survival. Now think about that for a moment, Cara. If you and I are in relationship and I become stressed and you become stressed and our trillions of cells constrict into survival, how can we be in relationship? We cannot.
Communication's out the window at that point.
It's out the window.
That's so important. I mean, I think about people who have surprises, and I think it kind of pops that up because you're in that heightened fight or flight stress zone where everything you thought was true is gone and you don't know what's true anymore. And trying to get that back, I think taking it from the perspective that you just said about, is dysregulation the correct term? Being dysregulated and taking it from that perspective, I think would be so much more helpful than what a lot of things people suggest
And
because
can I
it's so
add,
disruptive.
it's extremely disruptive, and that's exactly what it is. It's disrupting the present. And when we become stressed, stress does two things. Well, three things. Stress causes us to react from the past, obsess about the future, and it takes us out of the present. And when you say you lose your truth and you're trying to get it back and you don't know what's real and what's not, you're in survival.
Mhm.
So here's what's real. If I don't control or suppress or change this moment, someone's going to die. And it's probably going to be me first. So I've got to protect myself. So whatever you're doing that's stressing me out, that's activating my limbic system, activating my brainstem, whatever you're doing, I got to get you to stop it. Because
Hmm.
in that moment, the only thing that matters is my survival. And we've been brainwashed to believe that the way we've been parented was being parented from love. But the reality is, the way we've been parented is fear disguised as love.
Hmm.
And so then what happens is we're punishing our children and yelling at our children and threatening our children and spanking them and whooping them and taking things away and doing all this stuff because we love them. It has nothing to do with love at all. It has everything to do with fear and survival. But it's our fear and survival. But because we don't recognize our own stress reactions, we don't
Yeah.
recognize that in times of stress, our thinking becomes confused and distorted, and our short term memory is suppressed. And Albert Einstein said the definition of insanity is to do the same thing and expect a different result.
Yep.
Well, if you go back to Einstein and then you fast forward to Joseph Liddell, and he says, in times of stress, our thinking becomes confused and distorted, and our short term memory is suppressed. That's the very definition, that's the very foundation of insanity.
Hmm.
Because we just keep doing it over and over, but we're not doing it because we're bad. We're not doing it from an intentional place. Because in those moments, our thinking is confused and distorted, and we don't remember. We don't remember.